Welcome to another episode of the Maven's Private Diaries. This is Susan. I absolutely love what I do. It puts me in touch with the most incredible people. And recently I watched another episode of SBS Insight where they were talking about sex and consent. And I was quite captivated by a woman who's French-Canadian and grew up in Haiti. Her name's Nathalie Mills. And I reached out to Nathalie through the producer to ask her to join us here on the Maven's Private Diaries. And honestly, we had a really good chat. We both connect and love talking about sex and sexuality. I think you'll really enjoy this episode. So a little bit about Nathalie. She's a nurse by trade. She's living in central Queensland. She provides personal coaching, and she's embarking on yoni repatterning, which is very interesting indeed. So let's have a listen. And please, if you enjoy this episode, please tell your friends and family, share and like, and shout out to the world about the Maven's Private Diaries.
Thank you for joining the Maven's Private Diaries, brought to you by thespicyboudoir.com, purveyor of high-quality, premium body-safe pleasure products for the over 50s and people living with a disability.
Hi, my name is Susan, and these are my private diaries. Occasionally I will host a guest speaker or read out someone else's diary, with their permission, of course.
Content warning.
This podcast contains the occasional swear word, lewd comments and discussion around sex.
Warning, warning.
You will no doubt hear the emotional pangs of a woman who has lost her libido to menopause. Listen at your own risk and enjoy. Hi, Nathalie. Thank you very much for joining me today on the Maven's Private Diaries. It's such a pleasure to have you on my screen after watching you recently on SBS Insight. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for inviting me to your podcast. I did watch you also on your episode on the Insight, and that was very, very nice. I really enjoyed that.
Oh, great. I knew when I saw you say, I love sex, I just knew you and I had to talk and that we perhaps have a lot in common about how we view sex. Yeah. And we'll put a link in the show notes for people to watch the episode that you were on, but it was talking about sex and focusing on consent. And it was a really very interesting conversation with many different views there. And I remember chuckling where I think it was Kumi asked you, had you ever had sex without the consent of the other person? And you were very coy in saying, yes, I have pushed myself onto others.
Yeah.
So when was that like? Is this when you were younger? Or?
Yeah, definitely younger. Mm-hmm. I had a time in my life where I was very, because I love sex, I had a very healthy sex life, if you want. Mm-hmm. I've never seen myself having different partner at different moments, so not a regular partner, as not being healthy. To me, that's always been very healthy. And but I was at some point feeling maybe there was that young woman in me, you know, the one that's looking for love, that wanted so much that partner to be that person in my bed. And that person in my bed didn't want to have sex, and I wanted to. So I did. I was. It was after my first marriage, and I was a young woman, like between my 20s and my 30s, late 20s and 30s, and it's an interesting concept to push ourselves onto a man, because some men will let you win, because at the end of it he'll get sex at the end of the thing. And some of the men are very, very proud, and if they don't want to, they don't want to, which I love the fact that those men, which remain very dear friends of mine, were able to say no.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And maybe that was to say no in order to protect your friendship.
That's right.
Mm.
Yeah.
So you're French Canadian.
I was born in Canada. I was raised in Haiti.
Oh, okay.
So
And
French Haitian, yeah.
very interesting upbringing, I would imagine. Did you receive sex education?
No, I was raised by the nuns.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
I was raised in a convent by the nuns, so sex education was do not look at men.
Okay. And keep your legs closed?
Well, I don't think they've ever mentioned that, actually, because sex was not mentioned whatsoever.
Mm.
Yeah.
So how did you learn about sex?
When we were 13, maybe 12, 13, 14, I can't remember exactly the age. Around that time, one of my girlfriends at school, she used to love reading. Well, we all loved reading because in Haiti, there wasn't a whole lot of TV. And she had those books on, it was, I can't remember now. But anyway, it was a spy guy, SAS, that's a French series. And he was having sex with everything in front of him. And those books were absolutely fascinating. And we were just eating them up, reading all that and eating them up. But I think there was a lot of, that's actually created a lot of imagination for us without a lot of action, because in the same time we were in that strict Catholic environment where, you don't act on your impulses.
Sins of the flesh.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting because I learned about sex as well from reading, and I have to thank Wilbur Smith and his series about the Courtney brothers in South Africa. And so that's, I mean, I knew about the act of sex in terms of how to make a baby, but the sensuality and eroticism definitely, he probably introduced me to those concepts there. And I remember seeing, like, in Australia, there was a women's magazine called Cleo. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of that. It's not running anymore, which is a shame. They used to have a male nude centerfold, and my mother had a collection of Cleo magazines. I really should have a chat with her about it, because I've never actually talked to Mum about sexual pleasure in her era. She's second eldest of 13 children. She spent all her youth raising those children behind her. Raised a Catholic. We were Catholic as well, but not devout. Didn't go to church much. She had 5 children, so I know she was having sex, but I don't know if it was pleasurable sex. And I just wonder if she had her stack of Cleo magazines as part of her, either to express her own needs elsewhere. But Jack Thompson, who's an Australian actor, he'd be in his 80s. He was in, he was a centerfold. And look, if that man asked me to marry him today, I'd say yes. I've been attracted to him since I first saw him in the centerfold. So, something I remember from the SBS episode was Kumi was asking you questions about the culture of sex in Australia.
Yes.
And there was one particular word that popped up, and I really did chuckle. So I thought it is an Australian approach, because it's about having a root. And do you know what a root is now?
I do. I certainly do.
Yeah.
I've heard. I don't know if you remember from your time around Rockhampton, but when you go towards Emerald, and then you go further towards Bacolden.
Oh yeah.
There is 67 kilometers up from Bacolden. There's Aramac.
Yes.
I had some time there, and that's where I heard the word the first time.
There you go.
And I I was in a bar in that little community, absolutely small, where it's farms hands that coming in, you know, and all of that. Yeah, and with that, it was just like, what up? Really? You didn't say that. You know.
I know.
So that was my first time hearing that. Yeah.
Yeah. I have this little backstory. When I ended my marriage probably about 17 years ago, and I'd been celibate in the marriage for about 3 years. And I put myself on a pathway of rediscovery. And I knew that while I needed to explore my sexuality. First of all, I needed to repair everything inside, because I really had given up everything about being a woman. I let go of myself. I was very overweight and very unhealthy, so I'd let go of my intellect. So I addressed all of these things first. And then it was about a year after the divorce, I knew I was ready to meet somebody. And I was on a dating website. And this much younger guy his profile would pop up as being a possible match, but I never contacted him. And then, funnily enough, on my birthday, made a wish on a cake, and the next day he'd contacted me. I thought, rightio, you'll be my 6-week route. And we ended up being together for 7 years.
Oh, wow.
So, but yes, for anyone listening overseas, root, meaning sex, it's either a one-night stand or just a short-term sexual arrangement. So I'm not quite sure how long or when the word started, but yeah, uniquely Australian, I think.
Yeah,
So
I've never heard it before. So,
so who are you rooting now, Nathalie?
Well, if it's defined as a short-term relationship, no one. Because I've been in my relationship now for 13 years.
Okay, yep.
And it's we in this relationship we had the excitement of the beginning. So him coming from a 20 years relationship where sex was not there, not really celibate, but not satisfactory whatsoever. And and with me, I was in a relationship with this man, and after 2 years, probably became a celibate, but stayed in the relationship a total of 7 years. Because I knew I had something to understand. I knew there was something in me that was keeping me finding the right man for me. And I kept going for the people that I couldn't have, going for the people that wouldn't love me at the end of the day, you know. And I needed to change that. So I stayed there until I worked on myself and finally understood a couple of things. So all that to say that the day that I felt I understood something, this is how it happened. I just went, right, I'm ready. I'm ready. I can meet the man ready for me. And it's up to you now. But if it's this man I'm with, great. If it's not this man I'm with, great. I don't care. I'm not attached, but send me the right man. And literally a month later, I met my husband.
Yeah.
I already knew him. I never saw him as a potential partner.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. That's I've had a similar experience where you put it out there to the universe that you're ready to receive. And I'd actually been keeping a list of things that I wanted in my next partner. And like, it's quite a long list. And it's almost as if a magic spell was written and there's only one thing that he doesn't meet, and that's he's not a very good dancer. But he's everything else. He's ticked it off, and I'm pretty happy with that. So
that's awesome.
Oh, beautiful. So how long had you known each other before you realised that there was this connection?
3 years.
Sorry?
3 years. Yeah.
Wow.
3 years. Yeah, 3 years. It's a bit of a convoluted story, really. He was married, I was married. So the way we met is that I actually met his wife. We became best friends. And we had 3 years of calling each other 2-3 times a day. We just clicked, me and her. I absolutely enjoyed her sense of humor, you know, and I was working hard at the time. And I probably went to their place about 5 times for a party, because she likes to put party on. And I would stay the night, and in the morning I would get up and Ian would be there cleaning up. And so one day she calls me and she says, "Oh, listen, I would like to go on a holiday." And I went, "Oh, it's been 7 years I haven't been on a holiday, so yeah, let's go." So I asked my husband at the time. He said yes. She asked her husband at the time. He said yes. And so with the 4 of us, we were going. But then a week before we left, we were going to the Gold Coast. A week before we left, my husband said, "Nah, I don't want to go. I don't click with her, and I just don't want to go. I'm uncomfortable with her," which was typical of him, because he didn't like to be put with other people. He liked solitude. And I said to him, "Okay, well, I don't want to be the third wheel." So I called her and I said, "I don't want to be the third wheel. You guys go. I'm happy for you to enjoy the room that we organized, the unit that we organized." And she goes, no, I'm not going if you're not coming." And I went, "Oh, but no, I don't want to be, in the way." And then she goes, "No, you wouldn't be." So I said, "Okay." So I went and we met up in the unit. And the very next morning, I thought, I've got 12 days of by myself without my husband, that at the time I thought the company was quite heavy for me. And I thought, okay, this is for me. This is me time. So I got up at 5 o'clock in the morning, put my sneakers on, and I'm going for a walk. So I'm making no sounds, got out of my little room, and I'm walking towards the door, and I hear this sound in the dark. I'm thinking, what the hell? I said, "Who's there?" And then Ian answers. He goes, "Oh, it's me. Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going for a walk." He said, "Me too." So for 12 days, we actually had a walk every day. We talked about life, and we talked about what we wanted of life. We never once mentioned our partners. When we arrived there, his wife, which was quite heavy, and it's very hard for her to walk. She said to us when she arrived, she sat on the couch and she said, "I'm not moving from here. This is my vacation." And we just went, oh, okay. So we actually ended up doing everything together, So then we would go out, the 3 of us, for dinner and stuff like that. By the end of the 12 days, I got in my car. He went into the car with her. I went in my car and I realized, oh my fucking God, I'm in love with this man. And I cried and I cried.
I bet.
But there was nothing to be done. He's my best friend's husband. And I did nothing. He did nothing. And then maybe 2 weeks later, he calls me in the morning, because we continued walking and talking as we were walking in the morning. 2 weeks later, he calls me. He goes, "I actually don't know where you are in your life. I don't know what's happening in your life." But he says, "I decided to leave my wife. And once that is done, I will be waiting for you."
Oh, gee.
Point. He never.
Oh, my heart just went.
If I wanted him or not, he just knew we were connected. And then I came home and I told my husband. Yeah. So the time after that was a bit rock and roll for everybody, but finally we ended up together, and it's the best thing that ever happened to me.
Wow, Nathalie, we have a lot in common. I have a similar story.
Wow. Well, Susan, you're my sister then.
I think so.
Wonderful. Tell me.
So when I met my darling, and I was single, and look, I'll talk openly about this I haven't shared on the podcast, but I have written about this. My life in, was it 2014, I was planning to leave far north Queensland and relocate to Brisbane. I had exited the relationship from my 6-week route, and I call him the beautiful bogan, okay, because he is a lovely guy. I fell in love with his heart of gold, but we weren't meant to be together. There's too many differences between us. So I was set to move to Brisbane and looking forward to this fantastic life. I was in the power of my womanhood. Sexually, I'd been on a journey of exploration. I'd explored my bisexuality. I had lived in an open relationship with my previous partner. I'd been to swingers parties. I was really looking forward to what my next journey would be. And then about 6 weeks before I left North Queensland, I received a diagnosis from my GP that I had HSV2, which is herpes on the genitals, okay? And that floored me. It's just like, well, who the fuck is going to love me now? Who's going to want to have sex with me now? And I was heartbroken. I was absolutely heartbroken for my future. And so one of my girlfriends, she's part of me getting back on track. When I rang her, and she said it's not a death sentence. So that was like, helped me put my perspective back. And before I left North Queensland, I met this man who was married, and again, in a situation where he was not sexually satisfied in his marriage. So he loved his wife, and he was very upfront and honest. I'm not ever going to leave my wife. I love her. She's my best friend, but sexually we're just not compatible. He was also bisexual. And through my short time with him, he helped me restore, I guess, my sexual confidence as well. So anyway, cut a long story short, when I moved to Brisbane, I was dating online and meeting people. And as soon as I'm quite an honest and open person, so I would tell anybody I met, look, you just need to know I've got HSV2. That'll be it. Wouldn't see anybody ever again. So I thought, fuck this. I need to be upfront. And so in my dating profile, I put the message in my dating profile that I've got HSV2. Thank fuck it's not a Holden. Okay, so Holden special vehicle.
Yeah.
And just talked about, if you understand what I'm referring to and you realize and you know that this doesn't mean that sexual relations, are off the cards, then please get in touch. And I did meet some incredible people through that process, and also received some stupid messages from men, like, oh, what's wrong with Holdens? Or I've got a Maloo. I thought, yeah, just fuck off, keep going. But it was a very brave thing to do, to date openly, telling your prospective suitors that you've got HSV2, which is one of the most common, herpes is so common in the population.
It is.
And I don't get cold sores on my mouth, and I rarely, if ever, get a cold sore on my fanny. So I haven't had an outbreak since I was first diagnosed. But in the end, I knew that whoever I was going to meet, whoever fell in love with me, was going to be a significant, a magnificent human being. Okay. And I met him. But how I met him was, this gentleman was on the dating site. Him and his wife were having an open relationship, and she'd already been well and truly out there and seeing people. So he said, rightio, it's my turn. I'm going to do this. And his profile popped up, or he had looked at mine, and I wrote to him and said, if you and your wife are going to go on this journey, there's a couple of things that you need to be aware of. One, talking about STIs and how you're going to protect yourself, how you're going to communicate with your potential partners. Secondly, you both must read this book, and it's called The Ethical Slut, and it's written by two women who are long-term friends and lovers and partners, about how to deal with open relationships and polyamory and so forth. And from that initial, hello, you need this if you're going to do this, we just started a dialogue. And it wasn't my intention to meet, and I wasn't drawn to him in any way. We ended up meeting for coffee at McDonald's, as you do. And one of the first questions I asked him was, have you been in prison? Have you done time? Because he just had this I don't know, nervous, fidgety look about him, but he hadn't, obviously. He'd been in the services, but not prison. And I ended up becoming his sexual educator and took him to an adult club, which he'd never been to before. He hadn't had many partners, and we had a great time there. Then the following week, he came to my place, and it was that evening something shifted between us. We were just in a moment of kissing, and it was magical. It was like our spirits opened up and recognized each other, and something shifted so deeply, very deeply. And we both still recall that moment. And we sort of halted things, but there was a day where I was at a nude beach that I go to, or haven't been to for a while now. So it's changed a bit. I don't feel safe down there anymore, which is quite sad. But I just sent him a message. I wish you were here. And unfortunately, his wife saw that message pop up because they were in the car at the time.
Okay.
And it just created this crack, or I guess there was already a crack.
That's right.
In their marriage. And so we stopped seeing each other. And then he sent me this farewell letter, which was beautiful. And P.S., here's my Instagram account if you want to follow my photography. And I just knew that was like inviting to continue. So we spoke to each other and just let things calm down. I said, I don't want to start a relationship like this. So I put it, I could walk away. I'm not that invested yet, but I knew that there was something very magical between us. And so the marriage ended and he moved out and had some time on his own. And I think it was about 6 or 8 months after we got together that we started living together with this child. But there's been a day on the couch where we sometimes sit on the couch watching film clips from our youth and music that we loved.
Okay.
And he put his arm around me and he was singing a song by the Eurogliders, Can't Wait to See You. And Nathalie, I just had this feeling that I said, I feel like I've loved you since I was 15 and that you've been the boy that I've always hoped to meet.
Yeah.
Because we both like science, we're both computer geeks and technology, and you know, we like photography and we like nature, and I can dance, he can't, but that's okay. We like the same music, but there's this deep love that stretches way back to when we were teenagers. And I'm so, like when you were saying about this 12 days with Ian and getting in the car and feeling that love hit you, it's like, wow, it was meant to be. It really was meant to be.
And somehow his wife was the catalyst. She was one that brought us together, you know?
Yeah, and look,
we'll
same.
always be grateful for that.
Yeah, yeah. Can I ask, and you don't have to answer, but has your friendship with her survived?
No, so I tried to call her when I realized, when he told her that he was leaving her and that he said to her, I intend to have a life with Nathalie. I tried to call her, she never answered. She was deeply hurt. Yeah.
It's understandable. I hope she's been able to look deeply within and find healing there.
I hope so. She just remarried, so I'm hoping it's a good relationship for her. Yeah,
that's good. And how did your ex-husband deal with it?
Yeah, not well. No, not well. For the longest time, the last message I received from him was 10 years after I left him, so that would have been 3 years ago. I received a message, quite abusive message still, that that he'll, just hurt, a lot of hurt. Yeah.
Sad.
I don't actually know what is happening with it, because I have no one in common with him. So but I'm hoping that his life has moved on.
I know it's a really painful process when you tell someone that a relationship is over. Yeah. And I'll never forget the look on my ex-husband's face when I told he was quite shocked. I thought, hello, we've slept in separate rooms for 3 years.
Yeah.
And I've not engaged in any sexual behavior with you in that time. I don't know. Isn't that a sign? I think sex is a barometer in a relationship.
To us it is, Susan, but there are a lot of people it's not. As you know, I'm a nurse, and you've worked in the hospital setting before. I don't know how many nurses I've heard, and women in other settings, saying, I'm so glad I don't have to have sex anymore. So there is those couples where they're happy not to have sex. And to them, it's actually they have to satisfy the other one. They have to give him a route so that he leaves me alone for the rest of the month or whatever. And that sounded like your husband was quite satisfied to be in a relationship that had no sex, Sorry, I'm diverging.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. I could analyze and pick that all apart too. Sadly for him and my daughter, he passed away 2 years ago from long-standing health, which he brought on himself through his life choices. So, I just leave things as they are. For me now, there's no point breaking down and examining that time. But I hear women too saying, oh, I don't ever want to have sex again. And I feel a little bit divided sometimes. One, I want to respect their choice.
That's right.
Secondly, to ask, well, why do you feel that way?
That's right.
Yes, my ovaries have retired and they don't drive my bus anymore. But I've learned that while I don't often get that instant arousal, when I pay attention to my body with good foreplay and give it time, my orgasms now are far better than they were 10, 15 years ago. They're deeper, they're different. I have very different orgasms. Some are really quick and shallow, or they're deep, and they're like a wave before they peak. But why? I don't understand why people would give up pleasure when it's such an important part to our well-being and our mental health and the physicality of our bodies. So what have you discovered? I probably should mention to people listening, Nathalie is actually a nurse, we mentioned before, a personal life coach as well, and runs a clinic for people living with lymphedema. Anything else, Nathalie, that you want to throw in?
The clinic is lymphedema and lipodema. So it's the both, because when I started the lymphedema clients, the lipodema clients came in, and it was like, to me, I knew about it, but I didn't realize, oh my God, there is this whole community behind. But that's another story.
But in your travels and talking with women, what do you hear, or what have you observed around giving up on sex after 50?
Yeah, what I've observed is that a lot of women, from what I've heard, a lot of women are happy to just do themselves. So they live with a partner at home, but they both have different lives. And they come to a place where they don't know how to connect anymore. They don't know how to invite that person in their life anymore. And it comes to a place of, they put that in the throw-out basket, And we both know, you and me, having worked on ourselves in order to get this relationship to the place where we want it, that there's a lot of investments from here. And the other day, I was talking to someone about my latest episode on Insight, and she said to me, "Wow, you seem so comfortable with all that, Nat." And I said, "Well, I worked hard on myself, you know." And then she said, then she started sharing about herself. And she said, "See, me and my husband, we don't communicate. I don't know how to get him to come to those things and everything." And I said to her, maybe it's not for him to come to those things. Maybe there is a bit of work to be done with yourself first. And when he sees that, then he is curious.
Mm-hmm.
When was the last time we make it curious for our partner to say, what's she up to? Hold on, I need to know about this. You know, this is, to me, I have found that's the best way to do with men, is actually to give them something to look at, to enjoy, and to be curious about. You know, so, very often in my life, I have asked myself, would I go out with myself at this minute in time? And very often I had to change, you know. It's yeah. So coming back to the women, sorry, I transgressed.
No, it's okay. It's fascinating. I love listening to your observations and the way you speak.
Thank you. So there's a lot of women that they had to marry to have children. They did their deed, and now it's their life. And I found that very sad, to be honest with you, very sad. I cannot give you a majority of women, but a lot of women, I would say more often than not, I get women not wanting to have sex in their life because it's a chore, it's a chore. It's a chore, and they don't want to have that anymore. They're happy that they don't have sex anymore. Let's not talk about blowjobs, you know.
Blowjobs and hand jobs.
Yeah. So I think whilst men in their beautiful way are starting to wake up that it's okay to have their feminine sides expressing itself through emotions, we are uncomfortable with that because suddenly it's like, hold on, why is he talking about that stuff, and where am I with that? I'd rather be in the doing. Let's stay in the doing, because being like that is a bit uncomfortable. And women realize that, hold on, there might not be that much of a problem. I might have the problem. And that's where they get stuck. They get stuck in a place where the freak do I start? What does that mean looking at myself? What does that mean being a woman? How many times I had that question? I don't know anymore what it is being a woman. And it's like re-educating self to realize that we never left being a woman. We just forgotten how to get in touch with her. So for me, there's such an education to be done about, we're talking about sex, but there's a massive difference between, for me, my perception, that between having sex and anyone can have sex. You can have sex with anybody, but making love to that person, I'm using a stereotype here, making love, but having that presence with that person, having that connection while joining, it's not sex. It's something way beyond that. And I'm having goosebumps just telling you about this. It's so, sex is easy to me. Sex is, you can have sex with anybody. You can enjoy sex. It can be an okay sex. It can be a fascinating sex. It can be, oh yeah, maybe not, maybe we'll see other people instead. It can be all kind of sex. But that connection, you can have that with anybody too, if you are there. And those women not really knowing what being a woman is anymore, they lost that. Lost knowing that presence can be done with anybody in front of you. And I went to this workshop once, and this young girl, there was an exercise that we used to do, and I was part of this crew to help for the workshop. And she had no one. She was part of the crew too, but she had no one to do the exercise with. And it was an exercise where you put your hand on the face and just say, I love you. And with that, I was looking to make sure everybody was okay. And I saw her feeling left alone, feeling left aside. And and we knew each other because I participated in all her workshops. And I looked at her and I just went directly to her and we did that. And the presence in that little girl was massive. We were just there. And whilst that's not sex, that's actually being one with the person.
Yes.
And that connection, I can talk about it, but you have to experiment it. And
yes. And I've had a similar experience. I went on a breathwork workshop a few months ago, and we did this eye gazing exercise. All strangers in the room, but we had to spend about 5 minutes looking deeply into each other's eyes.
Yeah.
And we were all in tears by the end of it. It was so moving that you can, develop this very intimate connection with somebody.
That's
and
right.
that presence, like in the SBS Insight episode that I was on, I talked about in my youth, I had a lot of dishonest sex, what I call dishonest because I wasn't there.
That's right.
My body was there,
Yeah.
but I wasn't there.
That's right.
I was either having sex because I felt obliged to have sex, or I was in a situation where, I was just having sex because I felt it was expected, or to not save myself from a nasty situation, but just to get over and done with, like,
that's right. Yeah.
Not deal with the conflict of having to say, no, I'm not interested, and that pressuring. And in my marriage, I referred to sex in the marriage as being almost a functional device. And I had to laugh at one of the Facebook comments on the SBS page. Somebody wrote, "Oh, what, she straps it on," when they were referring to the functional device. And I thought, no, I probably should have explained it better. It was more about, I used sex to keep the peace.
Yeah, exactly.
I felt it was my duty as a wife to service my husband. Not that I would ever really approach him. Like, when I met him, I was a ill-informed sexual, sex-hungry sort of woman, but I was using sex for the wrong reasons. And but I loved it. I had a healthy sex life. Interestingly, though, I never experienced an orgasm with any of my partners, either on a one-night stand or with one of my friends with benefits that I had. It wasn't until I got married and was in that safe emotional space that I experienced orgasm during sex. So interesting. But I remember, my husband wasn't a sexual person. He wasn't romantic. He wasn't a good communicator. And his way of initiating sex, there was no romance involved at all. It was basically, I'm going to bed now. Are you coming to bed? And we'll have sex, basically. So there's no invitation leading up in a way that made me feel that I was attractive or desired. So, but the presence, like talking about my sex life, we've been together for 8 years. We're out of that bunny stage, definitely.
Yes.
So we're no longer at it like rabbits. We both have work pressures and family pressures on us, so we're not always in the mindset to be sexual. So we do tend to schedule time together, and it might be 5:30 as soon as, I'll send a message as soon as you're home from work, I'm waiting for you in bed, sort of thing. So we've got this window where we're home alone. We do recognise, or I recognise for him, and I think he understands it for me, we sometimes just need to be each other's masturbation device.
Mm-hmm.
And we call that, like, I'll give him a cheeky wristy. So, starts his day going to work with a big smile on his face.
Sure.
Or I'll need a nighttime sleeping pill where I'll reach out and grab my toy, and he'll help me with my toy. So there's always that I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine approach.
Mm-hmm.
And when we've had moments where we've misread each other,
Okay.
in terms of not about consent, but about being in the mood.
Yeah.
I am more outgoing sexually than my darling. So I'm all up for asking for sex, whereas he doesn't ask me for sex, and I wish he would sometimes.
Yes.
So I find that quite arousing to be asked.
Yes.
Because then I feel I'm seen as an object of desire.
Mm.
But ultimately I know that his desire for me, it starts up here and in my heart. And then it's my boobs and my bum.
Mm.
So, but with the presence, I have two sayings about sex. Sex starts with the eyes, it can start with conversation, and it can start with the hands. So, and the penis in vagina or thrusting, that's irrelevant. That doesn't, just bit my tongue, sorry. It doesn't define sex for me anymore. Whereas in the past, it was all about the man putting his penis in my vagina, but not anymore.
Yeah.
It's being there with each other.
Yeah.
So, I'm just looking at our time. I wanted to ask you a question about your personal coaching.
Yeah.
Just explore that a bit, Nathalie. So what do you focus on there? Are you focusing on women? Is it lifestyle?
Yeah, because of where we are, I do have a majority of women coming to see me, not by choice. The few men that I've had were very satisfied with the service. But around where I am, I think it's more about the women are more prone to come for help. And I haven't actually, I've been very, very blessed in my life. I don't do marketing. I just don't. And people just come to me, So I've attracted women more. And what I found is that I personalize. I experiment more with women with trauma and sexual trauma and emotional trauma than actually abuse victim. Never have any abuse victim. It's more about the mental and the emotional abuse, and the physical, because I'm also doing the yoni repatterning. Okay, so in Australian you would say yoni repatterning. There's an accent here that I put the accent in the wrong places, I think, for Australia. But and that actually helped me when I took the course. That actually helped me realizing how much I was keeping, and how much how much was stored in my body, in my vagina, in my cervix. And helping other women with that was just magnificent. It's like almost during the whole session, it's like holding a newborn baby, to be able to let that baby take their first breath and start their new life at the end of it,
Okay.
And it's always been fascinating for me, any session I've done with that. But what I found more and more is that with the trauma, the more you address the root cause with those clients, the less you need the physical intervention with the yoni repatterning. So, which is great. Yeah.
Gosh, okay. Now, have you got any plans to come down to Brisbane?
At some point I do, actually, yeah.
Yeah, good. So I think we need to connect in person.
That would be great.
And stand within each other's energy.
Yes.
Gosh. Look, I've so loved speaking to you again. I'm grateful that you were on SBS Insight. Otherwise, I would not have come to know you. And I really look forward to having another chat with you, because I think we touched on things that need a drill down, a good conversation around. So
I agree, because it's such a vast thing, and there's so much more that we could say. So I'm available anytime you need me.
Great. Thank you, Nathalie. Thank you so much.
Thank you for reaching out. Yes.
You're welcome. Thank you for listening to the Maven's Private Diaries. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and took away some wisdom, chuckles, or inspiration. Let me know your thoughts, either positive or constructive. You could leave me a review on your listening app. So this podcast is the property of Susan Jarvis, me, the Maven. For inquiries, please visit www.thespicyboudoir.com.